So I'm doing these videos hopefully to help you a bit. It's one thing to put up a PowerPoint and have you look through it. It's quite another to actually record and walk you through it myself. So the first of the series of recordings is on paragraphs. It might be self-evident, what are they? Of course, we all know what paragraphs are, but there's a little bit more to it. So let's get down to it. A paragraph is a group of sentences that have a united idea. They work together to develop a unit of thought. It also divides material into manageable parts for writers and readers. So sometimes I'll see student writers who write these long paragraphs, and although the ideas are kind of united, they aren't completely on the same level as each other. So I usually will write sometimes in my feedback that, hey, this might be a good time to start a new paragraph since you seem like you're venturing off into a slightly different direction. So they may be a little bit related to each other, but not with a single united idea. They also function differently in different types of writing. So we have a logical unit that develops an idea. We have topic sentences contributing to the thesis. The topic sentence contains the main idea of the paragraph and controls its content. But we also have some few topics in writings that will tell a story or explain a process. So we have different types of paragraphs for different reasons. They function differently. Remember, I cannot stress this enough, that when you have a new idea that's popping up in your writing, that calls for a new paragraph. And I'll say it time and time again and drill it into your heads. So what are the parts of a paragraph? Well, I kind of hinted at that before. It's similar to an essay. The paragraph has three main parts, right? We have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Each paragraph acts kind of the same way. The introduction, we call that the topic sentence, and that is the topic sentence contains the controlling idea of the paragraph. It's introducing you to the information that will be presented in that paragraph. And then in the body, we have supporting sentences. And you write as many related supporting points, details, facts, etc., as are necessary. Usually that means more than three. I know that some of you have gone through education where there's been a lot of format writing or formula writing. I've talked about the 5-paragraph essay in class. And some people like to teach that there should be a certain number of sentences in a paragraph, and I just cannot support that idea. Yes, you have certain parts and a certain type of structure that you should really follow because that just helps things make sense. So we start with a topic and then we have supporting sentences. You're going to have more than three. You're writing at a higher level now. You're not writing in junior high or high school. You're not writing 5-paragraph essays. You're writing longer essays. So your supporting sentences are gonna naturally be more than three so that you don't just have a 5-sentence paragraph. And that leads me to the last point, the conclusion or a transitional sentence. And this really depends heavily upon where in the essay the paragraph is. But typically those transitional sentences help to bridge or connect ideas from one paragraph to the next. So the introduction paragraph is slightly different than how body paragraphs function because in our introductions, we typically have a thesis statement somewhere towards the end of the introductory paragraph. However, you can also have a transitional sentence. And if you craft it well enough, your thesis can act as a transitional sentence to that first topic sentence in the following paragraph right after the introduction. That takes a little bit of experience and a little bit practice writing, but it is not impossible. So that's something to think about. So to sum this up, the topic sentence, supporting sentences, and transitional sentences. Those are the three main parts of the paragraph. Moving on to the next slide. Of course, we all want to know how to write effective paragraphs. So effective paragraphs are unified. You want to make a clear connection between the main idea of that paragraph, that is the topic sentence, and then the sentences that support, develop, and illustrate that main idea. So an effective paragraph is going to be unified. It's going to all be related to that one idea. Remember, one idea equals one paragraph. They're also going to be developed. You want to include detailed and sufficient support for that main idea. And you want those sentences to unfold and make your argument clear to your reader, or your argument, or what it is that you are trying to convey, especially in this narrative essay, what it is you're trying to say. So you want that to be clear and developed. Of course, we're also going to be concerned with cohesive or coherent paragraphs. Effective paragraphs are most definitely cohesive and coherent. That means progressing from one sentence to the next in the paragraph smoothly and logically. It's not going to be jarring, it's going to be smooth, and it's going to make sense, not only in content, but also in your word choice and grammatical structures. So you want to make sure that it's obvious to the reader how each sentence is linked to the main idea. And you can do this in a variety of ways. We can use transitional words, and you can Google up what transitional words are. I'm not going to provide a chart here for you. And most transitions are set off by commas. And if you use deliberate repetition of a keyword or phrases helps to keep the concept in front of the reader. You can also use parallel structures. So grammatically equivalent structures are used in a series, but can be two, but sometimes three or more, and that reinforces connections, again, between ideas, and also adds tempo and sound to your sentences. And you can also create connections among the paragraphs by using these coherence techniques. The 4 techniques above can also be used to connect paragraphs to the larger piece of writing, to the overall essay. So why do we use paragraphs? Well, they help to introduce a main point supporting the central idea, right? And they also center on one main point and develop a key example. You can also use paragraphs to help shift your approach from pros to cons or problems to solutions. Paragraphs can help mark movement in a sequence. And of course, we have introductory paragraphs that introduce the essay, and we have concluding paragraphs that conclude or end the essay. Paragraphs can also give some emphasis or mark a transition, especially if you are writing a longer academic piece. You may have some paragraphs that you just need to insert to help smooth the transition from one big idea to the next big idea. So you may use a whole paragraph as a transition rather than just a transition sentence. And of course, in dialogue, and this would come in narrative writing. Some of you may use dialogue in your personal narratives. So in dialogue, especially when we're reading novels and such, that indicates that a new person is talking. So you'll notice, and if you haven't noticed before, if you go and you read a novel that has dialogue in it, you'll notice that a new paragraph starts as each new person begins speaking. So that's another reason why we use paragraphs. And how are paragraphs arranged? Well, there are several ways that you can do this, and this will help with the overall coherence. Firstly, you can arrange it by time, that is chronological order, or by spatial order or location. This leads the reader from one place to another. You can order them or arrange them by details or ideas and their relationship to one another, some kind of logical order, such as general to specific, usually the topic sentence, which is generalized to supporting ideas. From specific to general, you may have the supporting details ending with the topic sentence. From least important to most important. That's a type of climactic order. You have a high point that comes at the end, or from most important to least important. Again, that's a climactic order where the high part comes at the beginning and then releases. And lastly, from problem to solution. The topic sentence presents the problem, the next sentence presents the main idea or the solution, and then the paragraph covers specifics of that solution. So one last thing is to consider the rhetorical strategies that help write paragraphs. So just like we have different essays that have different purposes, kind of like different genres within academic writing, we also have different rhetorical purposes with paragraphs themselves. So the way that you organize certain types of writing can also be used to organize paragraphs. If you think about the way we organize papers when you're writing paragraphs that use the rhetorical style. So we have narrative paragraphs. Narrative paragraphs tell what has happened, right? We have descriptive paragraphs. Those are paragraphs that appeal to the senses. Examples or exemplification. Those are particular instances of a larger category. And then we have process. Process paragraphs report a sequence of actions. Simply put, it's like a how-to, right? If you were you were to write a paragraph on how to change a tire, right? That would be a process paragraph. Cause and effect analysis. Those are outcomes and the reasons for those outcomes. We have the cause and then we have the effect. So you could do a whole paragraph explaining the outcomes and reasons for the outcomes. Then we also have comparison and contrast, and that has probably been one of the most familiar ones to you. Compare and contrast paragraphs show similarities or differences. Then we have the analogy paragraph, which is an extended comparison between objects not normally associated with one another. So it's a little bit more in depth, right? I said analysis. I wrote analysis on my slide. I mean analogy is an extended comparison. I'll correct that. And division paragraphs take a single item and breaks it into its components. So you're dividing into its various parts, right? Classification paragraphs take separate items and group them according to shared qualities. So you're classifying. So if you're writing a paragraph on animals or you're writing an essay on animals, you might have a classification paragraph or two on the different types of animals that you intend to focus on. You might spend time talking about dogs or talking about cats, classifying them into their groups according to those shared qualities. And lastly, we have the definition paragraph. And the definition is defining or providing the meaning to something. So that is essentially the highlights of paragraphs. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit of something, and having my voiceover on this slide, this slide presentation is clarifies things a little bit because I don't have all the words that I've just spoken to you. If you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with me. Thanks. Bye-bye.